Well, the big debate here in Parliament House has been over migration caps, which we thought the coalition supported. As of yesterday, they didn't. Helping figure this out for us is Nationals MP Keith Pitt, who's always honest.
And here in daylight hours, Tom. How about that?
Here daylight hours, plenty of time. We used to chat every week, and then you got sick of me, or maybe I got sick of you.
No, that might be more it.
Yeah. So help us out here.
Why
Why vote against these changes? Because they would give the minister a better ability to reduce student numbers and not favour the group of 8. Isn't that what the coalition wants?
Well, there's a few points first. This is a licence to print money for universities, right? It absolutely is. Full fee paying students is an enormous amount of income for unis. Secondly, there's more than one way to skin this cat. There's a number of ways to do it. And one of the issues that I understand is you've got Directive 107, I think it is, which also has an impact. So Labor can manage this in a number of different ways. And obviously the Shadow Cabinet's made a decision not to support
Direction
this
107 favours the group of 8 because of the nature of it. It allows rejection on the basis of the least risk, which favours the group of 8. So by making Labor only be able to do that, you're favouring the group of 8, which previously I thought you didn't want that to happen.
Well, Labor could change that in a heartbeat. That's something the Minister could issue right now. And there are universities out there who do self-manage and self-regulate and have imposed their own caps. Last time I checked, Tom, the principal purpose of a university in Australia was to train Australian students. But that seems to have been lost along the way. I still think that's the most important thing that they should be focused on. I understand the economic benefits, and they are definitely there, but this is all about balance. And the Shadow Cabinet's taken a position that they don't support this current legislation.
But what's Peter Dutton said today, he supports the idea of a cap, just not Labor's cap. But the legislation, it would be up to a minister to decide the level of a cap, so a future coalition government could lower it. This is what Peter Dutton was arguing he would want.
Well, as I've said, there's a number of ways to deal with this.
What's wrong with the cap way?
Well, this is one, and I'm not in the Shadow Cabinet. I can't explain to you why that decision was taken. It just is. So
do you agree with it?
Well, look, I think the impact on regional universities in particular is critical. But as someone who's got kids at university age, I know that the number of foreign students and the places they take, because they are full fee paying, they are taking places for Australian students. There's no doubt about that. And I think the balance has got to be struck and struck correctly. And obviously we have a policy position to put forward, and that's yet to be done.
But so Shadow Cabinet have made this and everyone else just has to go along for the ride?
Welcome to politics, Tom.
Not everything, though. Did you think others should get a say on this? It was a bit of a... Did it just suddenly happen and you read the...
Well, it would have gone to our backbench committee, which is normal. It's not one that I'm on. But the position has been taken. We have other ways to deal with the matter. The minister can easily issue another direction. They could do that tomorrow. This is like all of the policies around HECS. I mean, they could do that now. They don't have to wait till after the election to implement something to give people money to pay less for HECS. They could do that this week.
How do you think, though, blocking this bill is going to play out in the regions? Because regional universities were kind of largely happy with this being put forward because it did tip the balance back in favour of them.
Well, as I've said, there are some who actually impose caps themselves. And I think that's actually a very wise position to take because in the long term, if we look at what happened in COVID, that sector of the industry completely collapsed. They lost all of their revenue. So it's a risk and a balanced position. And I think the proposition taken by some universities is the right one. Clearly, the opposition has decided that this is not something we will support, and that's our position.
On another matter, we saw today some reservations expressed in the coalition party room, as I understand it, about the electoral reforms Labor's trying to rush through. The PM's talking to Peter Dutton about this. What's your view? Do you support the caps where they're at? Are you comfortable with seeing this rush through in just the next week or so?
Well, firstly, I won't be talking about party room, apart from the fact that nothing is yet decided. There is no agreement. That's what's been put to us. The concerns I have are really around... The political apparatchiks will be happy, right? Because all of a sudden there will be funding for the administration of parties which are provided by the taxpayer. There's an increase in the per dollar per vote in terms of being able to help with campaigns, and that's a good thing, but it is centralised. So there are challenges around this across the board, and ultimately everyone in this building should be concerned about democracy. Yes, we want to win governments, and yes, we want to be in government. But our democracy is critical, and the pillars that it's built on are just as critical. And I think this is a really important piece of legislation that we need to take some time with, and I think that will happen.
Would you think don't try and get it through before Christmas? You would urge broader consideration?
Well, we'll be considering and discussing further with Labor their propositions. There are things we are trying to get changed. There's no doubt about that. This will evolve as all pieces of legislation evolve. There'll be amendments and there'll be things that might go through the House and then get held up in the Senate. You know how it works. But ultimately, if the Australian taxpayer wants no one to contribute money from outside for elections, well, that means the taxpayer has to fund it. If that's not the position of the Australian people and they want it to be done differently, well, we need to look at how we manage the influence that some very wealthy individuals may well have.
We've got a documentary tonight, Chris Yorman's documentary on net zero, talking about the huge cost and the risks inherent in the transition. Donald Trump's election has turned the global framework sort of on its head. Do you think we should scrap net zero in this country?
Well, 2 points. First, on Mr. Ullman's documentary, I've seen some of the shorts and the clips. Looks like a great summary of everything I've said for 10 years. Fundamentally, we want the energy network to work and we want it to be affordable. But in terms of net zero, you can't argue it has no impact and no cost, because it simply does. So at a time where the Australian people are really struggling, and they are struggling to keep a roof over their head, and I've said this any number of times, I think Labor's position, they've moved too far, too fast and at too much cost. And if nothing else, we should slow down what's happening so people can actually afford it.
Would you like Peter Dutton to scrap that commitment, though?
Well, we'll put forward a position. I'm sure Tad O'Brien's working on the rest of our policy for the campaign.
What about you?
Well, I'm an individual.
You're not in the shadow.
My views have always been the same. I want things that my people can afford. And they're not the wealthiest people in this country. And a change of $50 in their power bill, that matters for them. So firstly, your electricity network, energy network has to work and it has to be reliable, but it has to be affordable. And the current proposition from the Labor Party simply isn't.
Should we pull out of Paris and net zero?
Well, as I've said, my view is that we should slow down, because people simply can't afford what's being put on the table now by the federal Labor
What does that
government.
actually mean, slow down? Does that still mean to get to net zero by 2050 and do the old hockey stick, which Conservatives used to push?
Yeah, but I mean, that's the commitment the Australian government's made. They've signed a treaty. That's what happens with governments. So it's a matter of the how and the how much and when. And I think right now the speed of what's happening with the Labor government is too high and too costly.
So don't
People
pull
can't
out,
pay for it.
but do it more slowly, is what you're saying.
I think I'd reflect differently on how to put that, Tom.
Well, but don't pull out.
I would put it in different words. I think we need to look at energy networks that work. I'm still a great supporter of coal. If you can offset a concrete plant and you can offset aluminium and you can offset the rest of manufacturing, well, why not offset what is the cheapest and most affordable and the most reliable source of power systems in this country for electricity, and that's coal. So if there's a way to do that, we should look at it.
All right, Keith Pitt, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Great to be with you.